while suspended Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane has threatened a tell-all media conference about extortion claims surrounding her inquiry to her fitness to hold office. At the same time, there is now a process to try and find her replacement. Now, the question we are asking this morning is, so what happens in this instance? Is the furore around the Public Protector's office with the attention it is currently getting? Let's speak now to political analyst Sanusha Naidu, who joins us from Cape Town. Sanusha, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the goings-on at the moment. The fitness to hold office against Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane that is being held. How should we, or how should the public, digest what is going on? Today, she's expected to give a press conference where she says she's going to lay bare what she says are attempts at extorting bribery from her husband. What should the public make of this?
Good morning, Cody, and good morning to the viewers. It's a serious claim, especially given the fact that it brings the Public Protector's Office, which is a Chapter 9 institution and is supposed to uphold the integrity, oversight and credibility, if not much more around the transparency and accountability. In other words, it plays a critical role in consolidating the democracy that we have. And so these kinds of issues that underpin what we're now hearing about extortion claims that the suspended Public Protector is claiming has been fueling the kind of issues in terms of how this inquiry has been moving forward, how it has been taking its mandate in terms of reference forward. For me, as a political analyst, but also as an ordinary South African, it raises a lot of disturbing issues about the integrity of the office. Yeah. And that means that it makes the institutional architecture of our democracy, which is built on this credible system around oversight and the separation of powers, even more delicate, more sensitive, and more acute in terms of breakdown. And I think, we use these terms like failed state, or are we a failing state, or have we reached the tipping point, etc. It's your institutions that are critical to provide that kind of respite to making sure that this democracy works in an effective, efficient, and equitable way, but also in a transparent and accountable way. Yeah. So the issue at hand here right now is how many people in South Africa, and I would hopefully maybe a survey will do this, if you ask the question right now, what's your level of confidence in the Public Protector's Office? Because these kinds of issues that swirl and circulate around the office itself in terms of challenging both the Public Protector, but challenging the Public Protector's reports, challenging whether the mandate of that office has been effectively charged in terms of implementation and carrying out its duties, then raises a challenge around confidence, credibility, and trust.
Yeah. There is a very determined chairperson who is leading this inquiry, and he appears to be at the center of these claims of extortion. And you have an MP who has since passed on. The circumstances around her death still under a veil of secrecy, if you like. You have a Speaker of Parliament who says, my hands are tied. I cannot act against the chair of this inquiry. It's got to go through the processes. Where am I getting at with this, Sanusha? It is that the month of October is nearly here. 14th of October to be exact. That's when Mkhwebane's term of office completely ends. Now there's a process to start the search for a new Public Protector. Why in the world would we be concerned about a process that is unfolding and has been unfolding endlessly, much to the frustration of the Speaker, by the way, while at the same time now a process to find a new Public Protector is starting? How should we digest all of this?
My more facetious response, Kohli, would be, this is South Africa. This is what it always does, is that it kicks the can down the road. It's been a very tedious process. It's procrastinated. It's gone on. I mean, this is what happens with these commissions of inquiry as well. And so, am I surprised? Should we be surprised? I think that's that's one of the questions. But I think what it does do, as you rightly point out, is frustrate the electorate, frustrate the public, and frustrate the fact that this is a critical issue and it should be resolved in the most expedient way possible. But now we have parallel processes. We have one in terms of the actual inquiry into the suspended public protector's ability to and fitness to serve in that office as head of the public protector's office. Then, of course, you've got now the extortion claims. That's another issue that needs to be looked at, and it's a serious issue in terms of the compromising the integrity of the commission of inquiry itself. Then you've got this process happening where the search for a new public protector to take office after this term of Busisiwe Mkhwebane ends. And then, of course, you've got the resource question in terms of how that has also played an underlying role and impact on the way in which this whole commission of inquiry has been going forward. At one point, she did not have lawyers. She couldn't afford it. The public protector's office decided they won't be able to pay for it. Now we're going back to finding those resources, or those resources are being secured. I think, it's part of the course in South Africa that these commissions of inquiry, as we have seen in other contexts, some work, some come up with important recommendations, but then, of course, the challenge is whether they get implemented. And I think, we can be facetious, we can be a little bit more frustrated because we don't see these coming to a kind of way in which they see a end result. They just continue to perpetuate. On the extortion issue of claims that there are members of the committee and there are extortion elements or extortion being affected in terms of this inquiry. I think it's important claims that needs to be ventilated and addressed by the Speaker of the National Assembly, because it does raise questions as a litmus test for forthcoming inquiries. Because this is what this inquiry is about as well, is understanding how the Chapter 9 institution, in terms of a head of a Chapter 9 institution, can compromise that institution, which is critical under the mandate and oversight of Parliament. Yeah. And I think this again is, for me, also what's disturbing is, if you are going to make these claims, you don't just, I'm hoping that these are not just frivolous claims to derail a process.
Sanusha, let me fine-tune my questions in this way. What is going on right now, I think it's possible, or it's fair for people to surmise that it is probably going to impugn the process that is currently underway. This chairperson of the inquiry, Qubutile Janji, will probably produce a report that will later be questioned. Is that part of the game plan here, as you see it?
Well, I think the game plan is, let's throw the commission into a questionable credibility test. Let's challenge the credibility, legitimacy, and authenticity of this inquiry, that there are essentially elements here that is not in the public eye. So already we know, even before you get to the point of a report, and you rightly pointed out that it's an impugned process, that by the time the process completes itself and the report is written and released, you already have a trust deficit. You already have a challenge around whether or not this report was written in terms of having not being informed or shaped by outside things, or even the whole question of the extortion claims. So already you've got the derailment of that report even before it has been written. And I think this is a strategy. It is the way in which you probably want to cast aspersions and cast the focus away from what the inquiry is about to something else. Yeah. And this seems to be what we do in South Africa, especially amongst our higher echelons of politics.
And people will say it's not the first time that the Public Protector has gone straight for the head of this inquiry, because previously she accused him of being unfair and impartial in many ways. Then let's come to what Mkhwebane's ultimate goal is here. As we say, both of us, we agree that her term comes to a complete stop on the 14th of October. If this process remains clouded up until that time, she walks away with her reputation intact, does she not?
Well, if the Commission is still has not managed to complete its work, and then this seems to be the other problem with the Commission. The challenge that the Commission has had is that it has not been able to keep to deadline, and for a variety of reasons, both in terms of how the process has been going forward in Parliament, but also resource constraints. So as you point out, I think technically speaking, she walks away if indeed the inquiry has not been completed, the report has not been submitted, and of course taken forward in terms of the recommendations and so forth and its findings, then of course technically the suspended public protector says, well, no inquiry has found me guilty.
Yeah.
But I think there's two different inquiries happening here. There's the official inquiry that's happening in terms of what's going on in Parliament and process and procedure that needs to be followed. But there's another inquiry that has already taken place, another set of assessments of the suspended public protector in the court of public opinion and her track record. So I think she can claim that no inquiry has been completed to say that she has done what she has done and that she's unfit to be a public protector and therefore challenge the suspension. But in the court of public opinion and her previous track record, I think also raises the fact that in society people don't trust her either. And that there's a whole lot of questions around her credibility. So I'm not sure how you would navigate that, because I think in society itself there's a serious frustration and a serious level of tiredness about these kinds of things that don't produce the kind of outcome you want it to produce, because it gets caught up in all kinds of legalese and other issues.
Yeah. Let's conclude the conversation with what we initially touched on, and that is the stature of this office. Reputational damage, the new public protector that is being searched for now, how much work do they have to do in order to repair the damage, if you will?
Well, I think the first thing is the search for the new public protector has to be somebody that comes with the kind of mettle and strength to be able to, it's very difficult to say, not get caught up in the politics of the state, but nevertheless do its work or do their work as independent as possible. So again, political interests, vested interests. We saw how the process ran in terms of the appointment of the suspended public protector. The second thing is you'll have to now reestablish that reputational distrust in terms of credibility and transparency and accountability. But I think it's also contingent very much so on where our democracy is going and what happens after next year's election. Because at the end of the day, the institutions and the commissions of inquiry are just a means to themselves. They're not really doing the kind of justice to the democracy, because the democracy is in its own kind of acute sense of cardiac arrest. So I think the problem right now would be technical process, finding somebody, then going through the vetting process and making sure that that person is somebody that everyone feels is the right person for the right job and has fit for purpose. But then re-establishing the fit for purpose of the Public Protector's Office is going to be a humongous and a massive kind of issue in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, and transparency. And I think that in itself is going to be critical, because right now our institutional architecture of the state is in a serious case of weakness.
Sanusha Naidu, thank you very much for your insights here. Thank you indeed, political analyst there.